Welcome to a truly special explainer. Today, we're plunging into a dark, mythic parable straight from our sources. It's all about the fragile walls humanity builds to keep out the primordial dark. Think of this as a grim, dark, gothic fable told in 4 acts. To really bring this to life, I'm going to guide you through a dialogue between 2 massive archetypal forces. On one side, we have the somber bard, the ultimate defender of society's rigid architecture. On the other, the chaotic jester, who literally just wants to tear the whole thing down. So let's kick off Act 1. I'll drop into the heavy, somber tone of the bard to set the stage for this tale of the high cathedral and the unlegislated night. In the vaulted silence of the great dining hall, we find a perfect microcosm of what we call the world of arrangements. Here, certainty is inherited exactly like land. Imagine this place as the absolute peak of social structure. It's a sanctuary where safety and order are passed down generation after generation, and the wine flows with the heavy color of old consequence. It's literally a fortress, built for one specific purpose, to ensure no soul ever has to face the terrifying, unmediated divine that lurks outside its massive walls. But wait, a burst of chaotic glee completely shatters that silence. A fortress? Look at this stark, absolutely absurd contrast. You call it safety and logic, I call it an iron cage of slave morality. You're trading your souls, paying up in the currency of obedience just to hide from the Dionysian night. Just look at the wildness out there beyond the walls. It's an unlegislated monster of energy, pulsing with this raw, totally uncaring life force that completely ignores the frail little rules of men. The bard desperately attempts to restore a bit of order, laying out the theology of institutions. The social structure you're mocking? That is the manifestation of the superego. These are the psychological walls we build right in our own minds to keep the wildness out. It's a psychic fortress, a literal high cathedral made of cold stone and rigid law. And sure, yes, it might be a monument to death, but it is specifically designed to domesticate the divine. This structure is absolutely crucial. It acts as a vital, if fragile shield against the primordial chaos, hiding the terrifying reality of that ancient, uncaring night, just so civilization has a chance to survive. Within this highly guarded sanctuary sit 30 guests of the approved kind. We're talking lords, ministers, and wealthy merchants. Picture a scene of incredibly deep stagnation. These guests are dining beneath the heavy, looming portraits of their ancestors, people who wore certainty like a shroud. These are the last men. They are entirely reliant on inherited, totally static social classifications to tell them exactly who is noble, who is ignoble, who is a saint, and who is a sinner. And watching over all of them is the white stone witness. Right at the center of the hall stands the angel, a magnificent stone monument with its eyes permanently cast toward a painted heaven. The silent sentinel was commissioned directly by the superego to watch over the structural arrangements of the entire kingdom. Its one job is ensuring that this rigid order remains completely undisturbed by the swirling chaos outside. But the jester just shakes his head. Oh, the angel is watching all right, but definitely not to protect you. You see, the angel secretly knows this high cathedral is totally doomed. It's not standing there as a protector. It stands with the particular patience of things that are waiting. It's a silent witness to decay, simply biding its time, waiting for the structural reality of these last men to inevitably crumble to dust. And of course, the illusions of the dining hall absolutely cannot last forever. As we move into Act 2, the bard shifts our tale away from the hall and over to the city of Hamelin. Here, the spirit of the times was suddenly and totally paralyzed. Hamelin, just like the hall, was a world of arrangements built of cold stone. But out of nowhere, its institutions were faced with something they simply could not classify, a biological plague that completely shattered the illusion of their iron cage. And this situation brilliantly illustrates the complete, utter failure of their logic. The grim reality of this plague was undeniable. Rats absolutely poured into the city. They spoiled the women's chats, they bit the babies right in the cradles, and they incited mighty consternation among the leadership. The cold stone simply could not hold them back. The theology of institutions was proven totally, completely powerless against this wave of unmediated chaos. Because they weren't just rats. The jester jumps right back in with this manic enthusiasm. They were a literal manifestation of the monster of energy. This chaotic, primordial force is exactly what these rigid institutions are so terrified of. These vermin weren't just pests, they were the raw Dionysian impulse itself, finally seeping right through the cracks of their precious, supposedly impenetrable iron cage. Right in their moment of mighty consternation, a brand new figure appeared. Stepping right into this paralyzed sanctuary of logic came a mysterious stranger. He stood entirely outside the community's social and moral architecture. And he didn't offer a prayer. He didn't give a civic lecture to the paralyzed leaders. He offered something else entirely. The jester is practically buzzing to describe this archetype. Just look at him. He's wearing this queer long coat, half yellow and half red, and he has these incredibly sharp blue eyes, each one piercing like a pin. The Piper is the Shadow Unleashed. He's a supernatural solution who, unlike those paralyzed leaders, has actually begun to understand exactly what he is an instrument of. The Bard solemnly outlines the contracts that followed this arrival. The Piper proposed a purely professional bargain, a secret charm to completely rid the town of vermin for the exact price of 1,000 guilders. And the town's ministers, totally trapped in their own transactional logic, actually believed they could simply buy safety using their currency of obedience. They genuinely thought they were just making a standard civic arrangement. Fools, the last men of Hamelin had absolutely no idea who they were actually dealing with. You see, the Piper is a Faustian striver. He wasn't there to preserve their world, he was actively exploiting their legal contract. His secret charm wasn't just some civic pest control. It was a Dionysian music far, far older than their stone cathedral, specifically designed to pull that monster of energy right out of the walls. And here is the fatal twist of Act 2. By making this professional bargain, the town inadvertently handed over the keys to their psychic fortress. They willingly gave the key to the spirit of the depths directly to a being who did not honor their moral architecture in the slightest, effectively sealing their own incredibly tragic fate. As we cross into Act 3, the jester gleefully lays out his sinister roadmap. This is the exact trajectory of my own inevitable descent into the cosmic vault. He tracks the 4 parables of his arrival at the Feast of the Superego. It starts with the Feast of the Last Men, moves to the Silent Angel, then the unleashing of his shadow, and finally turning their entire world into nothing but a footstool. Back in the great dining hall, the Bard resumes the tale, describing the jester's absolutely shocking entrance right in the middle of the second course. The jester arrived carrying this bizarre gargoyle scepter, and in the eyes of that scepter burned a defiant flame that completely and utterly defied the logic of the hall. It was this wild spark from an older, nameless, nocturnal star, cutting beautifully and violently right through the cold stone and that heavy wine of consequence. So how did the 30 esteemed guests react? They outright refused to even look at the gargoyle's fire. They desperately clung to their comfortable illusions of safety simply because the flame was, as they put it, inconvenient to explain. They were completely terrified of anything that couldn't be neatly boxed into their static social classifications. Exactly. The jester proudly claims his true identity. I am the Dionysian impulse. You see, he acts as a parasitic force. He is the raw, unpredictable, and totally uncontrollable nature of real life itself. He doesn't even need to destroy the great dining hall from the outside. He destroys its static decay from within, personifying the destruction of order and turning their highly sacred, extremely structured space into a wild, chaotic stage for raw energy. And now, Act 4 begins, the climax of our fable. It was a literal trespass against the theological architecture of the mind. The jester boldly scales the highest spire of human morality. He leaps up and steps directly onto the marble plinth of the silent, waiting, white stone angel. From way up atop the angel, the jester looks down. His mocking tone shifts into something massive and terrifying as he reveals the grand occult secret of our explainer. Your rigid architecture, your precious high cathedral, it is not a final destination. It is merely a launching pad. To the Faustian striver, the absolute peak of social structure is nothing more than a footstool to leap into the stars. The Bard watches in total awe as the tale reaches its conclusion. Stepping off the angel, the jester entirely dissolves into the blinding light of the great star Abraxas, entering the pleroma. In this cosmic unity, this ultimate ego death where all things merge, all those rigid social distinctions of the hall, noble and ignoble, saint and sinner, are entirely extinguished. The last men are simply left behind in the dust of their crumbling world of arrangements. And that brings us to the end of our fable. But before we wrap up, the jester leaves us with one final, deeply chilling provocation. When the walls of your iron cage crumble, what will you use as your footstool into the unlegislated night? It's a heavy, profound question, and it challenges every single one of us to examine those fragile institutions we rely on to shield us from the dark. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the walls around you.